I'm representing here the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission, which is one of the many field operations the Organization for Cooperation in Europe runs in its areas. The mandate for this mission has just been extended for another 12 months and will run now until March 2018, and has the political and financial support of 57 participating states. That includes Finland, of course, but also in relation to the conflict in and around Ukraine, it includes Ukraine and the Russian Federation. Finland as such is a very strong supporter of the mission. At the moment there are 25 Finnish monitors deployed to the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission, including the team leader in the Luhansk team, which is one of the two largest teams in the area and one of the two most complicated teams to run. These Finns work alongside other monitors, and at the moment we have almost 630 monitors on the ground in Ukraine who work alongside over 340 Ukrainian colleagues. In total, the mission at the moment has 1,082 members to the day, and they origin from 44 of the 57 participating states. If you look at our website, you can see the breakdown of the different contributions in terms of personnel that we receive. In the teams in Donetsk and Luhansk, 600 of those 630 monitors work at the moment, and they operate out of 5 patrol hubs and 7 forward patrol bases. These are locations dotted alongside the almost 500-kilometer long contact line, and they are there present around the clock if they're not out on patrol. There isn't enough time this afternoon to give you a full readout of the very complex situation there. I can only encourage you to read our daily reports, which we issue 6 times a week on our website, publicly available in English, Russian and Ukrainian languages. The 25 compatriots of yours, of course, contribute to it, and we'll see there what they are producing. We also have weekly live coverage from our activities, normally on Fridays, where we stream live a press conference which summarizes the weekly overview of what we have been achieving. I have been asked to focus in this initial few words on the security and humanitarian situation there, and I would start with the security situation there. The first agreement to regulate the conflict, as you know, had been signed 2 years and 8 months ago from the date, upon which 6 additional agreements followed that should implement some of the aspects of the original agreement. In all of them, the signatories, that is Ukraine, the Russian Federation, the OSCE, and those of certain regions of Donetsk and Luhansk, have agreed on specific measures to address the security situation. They have agreed to stop firing, to withdraw weapons, to withdraw tanks, mortars, to clear mines, and to disengage forces. And yet, as you know, the firing has not stopped. Many weapons have not been withdrawn, and others have been redeployed. There has been very little marking or fencing of areas that are contaminated with mines and other remnants of war. And forces have disengaged along fewer than 10 kilometers of the almost 500-kilometer long contact line. And I have just been looking this morning at the map. 500-kilometer straight line from Helsinki would bring you down to the triangle of Lithuania, Latvia, and the Belarusian border. That is the distance from here to there that the entire contact line is long. And you can understand the dimension of the problems that the situation there reveals. A few words on the use of weapons. And again, those, of course, among you who read our reports are familiar with that. But I would just to make clear that there are days where we have thousands of ceasefire violations registered, and there are days where we just see a few hundreds of violations. However, there has been only a single day during daylight since September 14 where we had not registered violations. Since the beginning of this year, on average, in the week, we record 11,000 ceasefire violations per week, of which 1,000 are explosions, and the explosions in our reports normally refer to the use of heavy weapons, so tanks, mortar, artillery, multiple launch rocket systems, etc. Weapons that are in places where they shouldn't be, so just to give you a practical example, a tank should be 15 kilometers withdrawn beyond the contact line, the front line, and if they are not beyond that line, they can still be engaged. This applies also to artillery and mortars and other weapons. In the period from the 13th of January to the 4th of May, we have seen the violation of this provision of Minsk 2,200 times, that these weapons are in areas where they shouldn't be, 1,400 times in areas not controlled by the government, and 800 times in areas controlled by the government. The package of measures, it's another agreement that has been reached in beginning of 2015, also says that the mission, the OSCE, can use all technical means necessary. That means satellite imagery, the use of unmanned aerial vehicles or drones in the common jargon. And we are using these. However, one of the biggest challenges we have is that not only our patrols, but also our equipment is regularly interfered with, jammed or shot down from the skies. Our monitors are threatened and intimidated, either at direct gunpoint or indirectly, and even it amounts at times to sexual harassment that our monitors are being exposed to. In this year's time alone, our monitors had been intimidated and stopped over 600 times and had therefore been denied access to certain areas. There can only be one reason why either the government forces or the non-government controlled armed formations stop us in doing our work. This is to prevent us from seeing what's going on beyond the point they stop us. In almost all cases, we know, because we have been there previously, that beyond the point of where they stop us, they are hiding weapons that we shouldn't see. And have a look at our social media feeds. There you will be able to see imageries of weapons hidden from view, weapons that shouldn't be in places where the sides have agreed on the dotted line that these weapons should have long been withdrawn. Now, you've also been aware that last month, on the 23rd of April, we have lost one of our colleagues in one of these incidents when a car drove over an explosive device, which we believe was a mine. That is very clear, the evidence that the civilians, such as ourselves, along the contact line, still are exposed to very great risks. The civilian casualties, to come to some of the humanitarian aspects also, are the ones that we are most concerned about. Since 2016, we have confirmed and triangulated over 440 civilian casualties in Donetsk and Luhansk region. Of those were 88 killed, 354 injured. This year alone, until mid of this month, we have triangulated 205 civilian casualties. 40 of those were killed. Almost 90% of those casualties were registered in the Donetsk region on both sides of the contact line. One of the worst days this year was last weekend, where over the weekend alone we had been triangulating 9 civilian casualties. 5 of them were killed, 4 in a single incident where we believe a single artillery round struck a house and killed instantly 4 civilians, injuring others. The majority of those civilian casualties that we had been registering were the victims of heavy weapons, those weapons that the sides have agreed should not any longer be in areas where they can be engaged. And if you turn around this fact, it is clear that if these weapons would be withdrawn, we would not have this high amount of civilian casualties. The civilian casualties normally don't die from sharpshooters or from small arms fires, they die from shrapnel that these weapons produce when they explode. These weapons are imprecise. These are not the pinpoint weapons that you see in movies or that some other nations use. These are indiscriminate weapons. You can't pinpoint a position. Normally a sector at the target is being used to then ensure that the target itself is being hit. These weapons are imprecise, And because weapons are often placed within built-up areas, these weapons themselves draw or retaliate fire, and with that often the houses surrounding these weapons are being targeted as well. We also see that, especially now with this weather again, that a lot of civilians get injured by mines and unexploded ordnance. These mines should have long been removed. Article 6 of the Memorandum of September 2014 made this very clear, and again all of those involved in the conflict have signed on the dotted line that these mines should be removed and no new mines should be laid. Now with the better weather in the eastern part of Ukraine, civilians go about their agriculture duties, they do their fields, they try to bypass the long queues when they have to cross the contact line because they don't want to wait for hours or don't want to pay the bribe or don't want to go through the bureaucratic procedures and then take unapproved roads that lead across the fields. And since January this year, we have already confirmed 44 civilian casualties that either died or were injured through these ordinances in the areas along the contact line, on both sides of the contact line. In particular, children also affected by this because they pick up this stuff from the ground. Some of these remnants of war look very attractive for kids. They're shiny, they look very strange, they take it home and play with it, and then they get injured or at worst killed. Infrastructure itself is being affected on a very regular basis. Just over the weekend, again, there were villages and then towns along the contact line that have been cut off from water. With the hot summer period now coming, water will become very essential because water pipelines and electricity pipelines that run water pumps go across the contact line. This leads to increased difficulties if these infrastructure lines are being hit. And the repair is very difficult, not just because of the ongoing hostilities and fighting, but also because the areas are often heavily mined, so the civilian repair crews refuse to go and work because they know they would be injured or killed if they would enter these specific areas. Now, those that want to help in the areas have great difficulties in doing so. The operations of international organizations in areas not controlled by the government have great difficulties. The United Nations, who stands ready to assist, has not been allowed to do its work in the areas not controlled by the government. At the moment, it is only the International Committee for the Red Cross that has the reach as an organization throughout the areas not controlled by the government. In the areas controlled by the government, international organizations do have access to deliver humanitarian aid. However, in the areas closer to the contact line, where there are still hostilities ongoing, their access for international organizations remains difficult and interfered with. I have to mention, of course, that there are multiple private initiatives that help to deliver humanitarian aid in a smaller scale, but pinpointed to people or communities that are especially in need. And I'm glad to see Oksana here today, who is undertaking some of this work as well. We contribute to these efforts by providing information where help is needed. We are able to facilitate localized ceasefires that enables the delivery of the aid or the access of the aid, but we ourselves, we are no humanitarian agency, so we don't deliver food or repair hospitals or recover the dead, but we can enable this because we have a mandate to work on both sides of the contact line, and we have a robust presence on both sides, and we have no political impediments to speak to everyone involved there, including those currently in control in areas where the government has no control. Another topic that was put to my attention for this discussion here today was the future of the implementation of the Minsk agreements, but with your permission, I would leave this to the debate rather than for a monologue from my side. Thank you.